This is a 2021 Giant TCR Advanced Pro 1 disc, and quite possibly the best value for money performance road race bike you can buy right now. This is my final review of the bike after long-term testing it. You might have seen a few videos going right back to May when the bike first arrived with me, and a few updates since then. I'll put links down below. But the bike's going back, so this is my final conclusion, my final summary of the bike. So we'll go through the bike in detail, talk about the ride and handling, and we'll talk about how it compares to key rivals in this category, like the Specialized Tarmac and the Trek Emonda, to name a couple. So let's dive in. One of the immediate and long-lasting impressions the Giant TCR offers is the speed. It's clearly a very, very quick bike, even with me on it. Now, quantifying speed is a really difficult thing. You can't put it on the scales to assess weight, but using a power meter, which the bike comes with, and using Strava and riding roads I know really, really well, and comparing to other bikes I've ridden the same routes and segments on, this bike is clearly very, very quick and doesn't hold you back in any way at all. Low speed, high speed, climbing, descending, it's just a quick bike everywhere. It's that good all-round speed you want from this sort of bike. Now, clearly it's not as quick as a pure aero race bike like the company's own Propel or the Trek Madone or the Canyon Aero that I've ridden in the past, but the TCR really shows the gap between a traditional lightweight focused bike and a pure aero road bike has really been narrowed. So getting a lot of aerodynamics on this bike whilst maintaining the low weight and all the ride this bike is known for, but the gap between an aero bike and lightweight bike has really been closed. So you're not losing much compared to an aero bike, but if speed matters, an aero bike will still be the option to go for. But if you want lightweight and you want a bit of aero, then this bike offers that in a really nice package. And the reason for the speed on this new bike is that this 9th generation TCR has an aero optimized frame for the first time. You can see it in the fork blades, the head tube area, and the brand new down tube. It's a really fat, quite distinctive shaped down tube, and the idea of the shape is to smooth airflow around the water bottles. So they've actually designed the bike with water bottles in mind, which is a really sensible thing because most of us do ride with a water bottle. You can also see an aero shaped seat tube and seat post, and there's an internal seat clamp and nice slender rear stays. And they haven't followed the bike trend of dropping the rear stays because they said they felt no need to go down that route. They achieved all the weight, stiffness and compliance and aerodynamics they wanted in the frame without resorting to dropped rear stays. As you can see, the bike isn't nearly as integrated as some other bikes in this category, like the Trek Emonda or the Specialized Tarmac. And we have partially external cable routing on the front, which is a topic I'll talk about later because that has caused a lot of debate in the comment section. But as you can see, they haven't gone down the full integration route. And speaking to Giant, it's clear while they're seeking more aerodynamics, they didn't want to compromise the weight and also the practicality this bike offers. And internal cable routing, while it looks nice and modern, does have downsides in terms of maintenance, building a bike, disassembling it for traveling, and other factors. So that's why they've gone for quite a pragmatic solution, which I can definitely get on board with, but I'll talk about that more later in the video. And it's impressive they've managed to add all the aero features to the frame whilst dropping the weight. So the weight hasn't gone up in that pursuit of aerodynamics. The frame is actually lighter in this mid-range model by 40 grams, with a size medium weighing a claimed 860 grams with a 360 gram fork. This model is a mid-range bike. There's also the SL, which uses really high-end fancy carbon fiber and a robotic cutting layout, which sounds amazing. And that weighs about 700 grams or a bit less. And then there's the more affordable model, which comes in at about 900 to 1,000 grams. So they're all within a few hundred grams of each other, but this is a mid-range model. And this bike, as you see it here, this is a size ML with a Shimano Ultegra mechanical group set, carbon fiber wheels, and some nice finishing kits. Weighs 7.58 kilograms on my scales. So we'll talk about weight later because there's some interesting comparisons to make with other bikes in this sector. But you're getting a lighter bike, a very competitive bike for the money as well. And the low weight definitely helps on the climbs, as you'd expect. And this bike on my local climbs has been a really amazing companion in helping me to achieve some new PBs on quite a few of my local climbs. And climbs, whether they're kind of long and steady with a few hairpins, like one of my favourite climbs over near Nailsworth, or some of the more brutal steep climbs around Stroud where they're 25 to 30% and they're just straight up and it's a pure power game. So the low weight definitely helps, and also the stiffness of frame offers. So stiffness to weight ratio has been the big mantra of the Giant TCR design philosophy for a long time. And that stiffness to weight ratio means you have a lightweight frame and a really stiff frame to get a massive oversized down tube, which helps with stiffness. You've got a press fit, oversized bottom bracket, chunky rear stays, front end is nice and stiff from that new head tube junction. So it's a very responsive bike when you climb. It feels very direct. There's no sense the frame is flexing or twisting under even my admittedly meagre power output. So it's a bike that climbs really well. And if you like climbing in the mountains or local small hills, this bike definitely excels in that area. And then coming down the other side, this bike handles brilliantly. The TCR geometry hasn't really changed much from the previous version. They've modified it a little bit, and the geometry gives that perfect balance of kind of high speed flickability, so you can really change direction, change your line choice really easily, but it's also nice and stable for a race bike. So even after 4 or 5 hours in the saddle, it's still nice and easy to ride, and it's a very accessible race bike in that way. Some race bikes can be very lively, which is great if you're prepared for that and you want that, but it can get tiring quite quickly. I think the Giant TCR strikes a nice balance between being really nimble and agile, which you want in a race bike, but also calm and steady when you want to just switch off, enjoy the views, get the miles in, and let the bike take care of everything else for you. Now, normally you don't buy a race bike because you're concerned with comfort. And in the past, race bikes were purely focused on stiffness and low weight, and comfort was way down the list of priorities. But now we're looking at race bikes that offer amazing levels of comfort. Admittedly, not as comfy as a modern endurance bike with big fat tyres or even a gravel bike, but much comfier and smoother riding and much better at dealing with rough roads than ever before. A lot of that is down to tyre clearance. So my old Cannondale Super 6 Evo would max out at a 25mm wide tyre back in the days when a 23 was standard. Now the Giant TCR comes stock with 25s, but would go up to a 32mm tyre. I mean, that really is the stuff of endurance bikes, and really shows how race bikes have evolved very rapidly to offer wide tyre clearance. So you can now modify bikes to better suit the riding you might be doing. You can stick with a 23, 25 if you're racing and you're all about low weight and aerodynamics, but you need to go to a bigger tyre for more comfort if you want a race bike performance and handling, but you're not racing and you want a bit more comfort, without going to an endurance bike where you get bigger tyres, but you also get features you might not want, and you get that much more laid back sit up and beg geometry with a taller head tube, shorter top tube, which not everybody wants in their sort of performance road race bike. As a demonstration of the comfort this bike offers, way back in the summer, which seems like a long time ago, myself and a few friends rode down to the coast, which from here in the Cotswolds was a 350km round route from sunrise to sunset. I used this bike, not an endurance bike, but this Giant TCR race bike. I had some 28mm wide tyres on it, put a bar bag on, had my pockets full of food, and the bike was absolutely fine. So the comfort the bike offers is adequate that you can do big all-day rides. So that's not an issue at all. The other issue with comfort is geometry. And geometry, so two factors to comfort. There's compliance in the frame and the tyres, and there's also your fit and position on the bike. Now TCR is your classic race bike, so quite long, quite low. This is a size ML, and they tweaked the size on the ML a little bit so it fits more neatly between the large and the medium before it closest to the large. And I'm 5'11", by the way, and this fits me perfectly with this stem, couple of spacers, and my saddle height of 76 centimeters, so perfect fit. But if the position is too aggressive for you, it's too stretched out for you, you'll get a bad back, get sore shoulders and arms, and you'll be better off with an endurance bike like the company's own Defy or a Domani or Roubaix, which has a taller head tube, a shorter top tube, just to bring the handlebars closer to you so you're not quite as stretched out. The Shimano Ultegra mechanical group set has been flawless. I don't think there's anything to say about it that I haven't said in my previous video, linked above if you missed that. Perfect shifting, great brakes, just a solid, reliable group set, and you're getting Giant's own dual-sided power meter, which is an £800 addition on its own, and you can barely see it, really neatly integrated into the cranks, and that pairs with any computer like my Wahoo really easily and gives consistent and reliable power data if you're into power data and you want that to extract the most performance out of your riding and training. All the kit on this bike has been flawless as well, really. I love the shape of the saddle. The handlebars have a nice shape, nice bar tape, and even the stem looks good. And as you can see, apart from tyres, I haven't changed anything on the bike. You're getting such a good package. Everything is so well sorted. There's nothing you need to change or upgrade, as is the case with many bikes. But yeah, it's just a perfect package all round, really. But there are a couple of potential wrinkles that I'll now point out. So the first one is the press fit bottom bracket, which I know a lot of people don't like. This though is a PF86 bottom bracket, and because Giant manufacture their bikes, they have supreme quality control. And with this bike and other Giants and other bikes with this same bottom bracket standard, I've not had any issues at all. In fact, I've not had many issues with any issues actually with press fit bottom brackets, so maybe I'm just lucky. But I hear your concerns around press fit, and many bike manufacturers are now responding and going back to external threaded bottom brackets with the latest developments from axles and cranks, and the newer T47 from Chris King, which looks to be quite a popular standard with a few bike brands. But Giant, I don't see Giant changing from press fit anytime soon, and my experience with this bike, riding it for most of the year, not had any issues at all. The bottom bracket is still spinning smoothly, no creaking, squeaking, groaning, no noises at all, so it has been fine. But I know that's a potential issue for many people, so just highlighting that. The other issue around this frame is the cable routing, which has caused a surprising amount of debate in the comment section, with many people either loving it or hating it. And I spent a lot of time riding this bike, most of the year in fact, and I both love it and hate it. Now my heart says I would prefer a fully internal cable routing like we're getting with the new Specialized Tarmac or the Trek Emonda, fully integrated, looks clean and it looks modern, and a teeny bit more aero if the claims are to be believed. But my head says this is a more logical solution and makes a lot more sense in a number of ways. First and foremost, you're getting the best shifting performance. As I found with some bikes like that Merida Reacto, where the cables are routed inside the frame, handlebar and stem, the shift quality is impacted quite severely. It's not super bad, but the shifting isn't as light as it should be and is on this bike. So that's one factor. The shift performance is compromised due to internal cable routing. I don't know whether that is a compromise worth paying, depends on your point of view. It's also easier to change the stem and handlebar and easier to pack away in a travel case when you're going travelling. These brand new Giant SLR1 wheels are a real highlight of the component package on this bike. Now you expect to get a carbon fibre wheel set on a bike of this price in most cases, but not always. But these are a really good wheel set. For starters, they're lightweight, about 1400 grams, which is really good for the money. You're usually looking at about 1600 grams for a carbon fibre wheel set with this sort of depth rim, so that's good. You get really high quality hub internals, which are the same as their higher end wheel sets and claimed by Giant to be better than the benchmark DT Swiss 240 hubs. And the wheels definitely contribute to the performance of the bike with that sharp, snappy responsiveness you want from a carbon fibre wheel set, good stiffness for sprinting and climbing, and also the Aerodynamics a carbon fibre deep section rim offers as well. And I've had no issues with the bearings at all. They haven't worn out, they're not making any noises, nothing like that. The only thing I don't like is the free hub, which is bloody noisy. But it's quite handy when you're riding on a fast group ride and your mate on the front is showing visible signs of struggling. You just freewheel a little bit and it's so loud, it kind of plays with the mind, thinking, oh, if my mate behind me having an easy time, I need to pedal harder. So that's quite nice if you're that sort of person. I'm not, I'm just saying, you could do that if you want to. Anyway, in the time I've had this bike, I've had the opportunity to test many tyres of different widths and different quality tyres. Now you can see I'm running some Pirelli 26mm wide tyres at the moment, but the bike arrived with a set of Giant's own Gavia Course 25mm wide tuber tyres, which are fine. I ran those for about 2,000 kilometres and had no problems, not even a single puncture. Amazing. So the tyres are fine, I had no issues with them, but I was keen to unlock more performance from this bike because higher up Giants come with better tyres. Now we're doing a tyre group test for a magazine, which you might see on the shelves in a few months' time. So I've had lots of tyres to test. And the first thing I did was go to a 32mm wide tyre to test the clearance claims on this bike. And the 32 does indeed fit with loads of clearance around the rear stays and the fork. However, these Giant SLR1 wheels, which are excellent by the way, have a 19mm internal width, which with a 32mm wide tyre does result in the tyre light bulbing quite a bit. So that's a downside to these wheels, not as wide as more progressive tubeless carbon wheels like those new ones from Zip or Hunt or Envy or others in the market. So that's the only downside to running a 32 on these rims, is that light bulb effect. But going to a 28 isn't as bad, but I found a 26 is probably the perfect sweet spot for these wheels that come on this bike. With all the tyres I've tested, I've used them tubeless because these new SLR1 wheels are tubeless ready, using a new hookless bead design. And these Pirellis, the Goodyears and the Michelins are 3 brand new tubeless tyres launched this year, which in my experience have offered exceptionally good tubeless setup with no issues at all. Use a normal track pump, they go up first time, no sealing issues, no issues at all, just the perfect demonstration of tubeless technology. So a tyre upgrade, if you're buying a bike, is a top tip from me. Let's talk about price and value for money, and I'll compare it to a Trek Emonda and a Specialized Tarmac for this. But first, the price. This bike I'm testing now costs £3,799. And I say now because when it launched back in March, it cost £3,599. So a £200 increase. What gives? Well, speaking of the Giant, it's become clear that when they set the prices back then, before the pandemic, basically the world has been turned upside down. The currency had gone haywire, and the supply chain logistics have meant increases across the board. And it's not just Giant, other brands are also putting up their prices, so we can see a lot more price adjustment going forward. I'll do a separate video on this topic very soon. But even with that price increase, I still think the Giant TCR is great value for money, as I'll demonstrate by picking 2 key rivals. So since I had this Giant, I've had lots of people ask me how it compares to the brand new Trek Emonda and the brand new Tarmac SL7, and that's understandable. These are 3 brand new bikes for 2021, well they launched in 2020, and they're all lightweight bikes now given an aerodynamic makeover, so they sit in that same category. And unfortunately, I haven't ridden a Trek Emonda yet, or a Specialized Tarmac. Now Trek won't send me a bike because my channel was too small, and Specialized are sending me a bike coming soon hopefully for a comparison, but I'm way down the list of priorities compared to bigger mainstream publications, so I've had to wait quite a while. So while I can't talk about performance and ride and handling, I can talk about weight and value for money, because here there are some interesting details to compare. So let's dive in. So the closest rival from Trek is the Emonda SL6 Pro, which is cheaper at £3,350, and you get a full carbon frame with fully integrated cable routing, which is a big feature of the new Emonda. But you don't get a power meter, so adding a dual-sided power meter, £800 or thereabouts, is going to take the price up to nearer £4,000, so more expensive than the TCR. Now another really interesting detail is the weight of the frame. So the Emonda SLR, the range topping one, is a sub 700 gram frame, they're very impressive, but the Emonda SL has a 1,142 gram frame weight, which is loads more than the Giant TCR. And Trek claims the whole bike weighs 8 kilograms, so quite a bit more than the TCR. Now I'm really not sure why the Emonda SL is so much heavier than the Emonda SLR. Manufacturing, cost, price, I've no idea. Love to know. If Trek, if you're watching this, if you let me know, that would be fantastic. On to the Specialized, and the Tarmac SL7 is another brand new bike, and like the Emonda, it's an aerodynamic, lightweight bike with fully integrated cable routing, so really neatly done. The frame weight is much closer to the TCR, weighing 920 grams in this more affordable version. However, the massive downside here is that the cheapest Tarmac SL7 costs £5,250, so a big price increase over both the TCR and the Emonda that I'm talking about here. Now, if you want a more affordable version of the Tarmac, you have to step down to the older SL6 version, which in the SL6 comp build costs £3,500. Now the SL6 is a really good bike, one of my favourite race bikes from the last few years, with really good handling, good performance. And this is a Specialized way of doing it. When they launch a new bike, the previous model gets pushed down, becomes more affordable, compared to Giant and Trek, where they scrap the old bike completely and bring out the new bike at a wider range of prices. So different strategy with bringing out a new bike. So what that means is you're not getting the latest, greatest state-of-the-art SL7, but you are getting the SL6, which is a really good frame. But where it doesn't look so good is in the spec. So yes, you get a full carbon frame, you get a mechanical Ultegra group set, but no power meter and no carbon fibre wheels. So compared to both of those bikes, I think the Giant TCR in this spec offers exceptionally good value for money, and hopefully this comparison is giving you a better idea of why I think the TCR is such good value for money. Okay, back to the review and time to wrap things up a little bit and give my final conclusion. So I've been riding this bike every day pretty much since it arrived in April, May, and I've absolutely loved it. It's been an amazing bike to ride. It's everything I want in a road race performance bike. So it's really fast, with great handling, the geometry works for me, and the value for money is fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, compared to some key rivals, you're getting so much bike and so much performance for the money compared to those bikes. And there's nothing really to fault. Great saddle, wheels, handlebar, stem, a dual-sided power meter. Amazing really, fantastic value for money, and the performance is first class. And what I really like about this new TCR is how Giant has addressed the aero trend and made it faster, but not sacrifice the weight, the stiffness and the handling that this bike is renowned for. In fact, it's lighter than it used to be as well. So it's a win-win all round, and that's why it's an easy bike to recommend. And I have tried really hard to find things to fault on the bike, things to point out as being not so good, but I can't. There aren't really any things for me that really detract from the overall package that this bike offers. I guess if you're being really fussy, the press fit bottom bracket, maybe the cable routing, and maybe if you're being really picky, the way the bike looks. And I know some people have said it looks a bit boring, but in the flesh it looks much better. Really nice paint job, bit of red, bit of naked carbon, quite handsome profile, nice Giant understated logo design. But looks are subjective. You may have a different opinion, of course, I'm sure you will. And I know some brands have bolder paint jobs and more leery designs, which might appeal to you more than this. But I think Giant have done a better job with this bike than previous versions, which were not so agreeable to my taste. But this bike definitely works for me. Understated, simple, I like it. So that has been my review of the 2021 Giant TCR Advanced Pro 1 disc. And if you're in the market for this sort of bike and you want a new bike this year, I highly recommend this bike. It's great value for money, offers fantastic performance, and if you can buy one, I recommend you do. Now I say can because stock has been an issue this year with cycling going through the roof and supply being a major factor in getting a new bike. But if you can find one, I do recommend it. And I'll put links to the retailers down below that are selling this bike at the moment and have it in stock, so check out those links down below. And also check out the Giant website for more models in this range. They start at much lower prices and go right up to the SL as well, so a bike for all budgets as well. And getting the same sort of core frame design and the same core performance, just different equipment depending on your budget. Anyway, that's all for me. Make sure you keep liking, keep subscribing, keep following me on Instagram and Twitter as well. I've got a Facebook page now as well, so you follow me on there as well. And that's all for me really. It just leaves me to say thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again next time.